All right. So thrilled to have, first of all, the most beautiful pink suit on the planet. For those of you listening, it is the most beautiful pink suit. Cindy Eckert, back at the helm of Sprout Pharmaceutical. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So people should understand there's history here. For me to say back, and it's Sprout 2. Is that like the official name now?
No, we're the holding company, but we got the whole company back, so Sprout Pharmaceuticals again.
So amazing. So Sprout starts.
Yes.
And actually, I wish we had the time to even talk about why you even started Sprout.
Yes.
Could you give us the little elevator pitch?
I'll give you the quick. I built a company in one of the male sexual health. I had one of those drugs. I knew there were 26 drugs for some form of male sexual dysfunction and not a single one for women. And it wasn't because of the science. It was because of the societal narrative. I went and got the best science, took it on, took it all the way through the FDA, got the drug approved, sold the business.
Took it through the FDA twice.
Twice. So got rejected in my first round, despite the fact that I had 11,000 women worth of data. So I made a decision to dispute the FDA. You know, when it comes to men's health, women's health, we have very different perspectives in terms of what's being brought to the table. We accept biology at face value for men. We chalk a lot of things up to psychology for women.
Right, there are emotional issues.
Yeah. What's the single best word to hold up progress? To say it's complicated. Sex is complicated whether you're a man or a woman, and both of us bring biology into the bedroom. And for women in which there is a biological dysfunction, a lack of interest in sex that's neurochemical, we weren't doing anything about it.
Well, and that's, you know, I've read so much about you, but one of the things is to call this drug, which it's Addy,
yes,
to call it the female Viagra is incorrect.
Totally.
Like, let's just dispel that, stop right now.
Stop.
Because Viagra is taken in the heat of the moment.
And Viagra is a blood flow issue, right? It's blood flow. Desire is not blood flow. It's not on demand. It's in the brain for women. And that's what we know. We understand it from all of these brain scan studies over time. So female Viagra is the worst moniker. I get why press latched onto it. Contextually, this was a breakthrough first. But it really sets up the wrong construct for understanding how the drug works or what's going on for women.
And again, if we had the time, you actually had no science background.
Business.
Spectacular
scientific teams. I think there's always been a strength has been that commercial mindedness that can sit alongside spectacular scientific teams and understand those things that would really work in the market. Sometimes in the lab you can get lost in the discovery process and not know what's really going to work. So, you know, that is a perfect marriage, I think, in drug discovery.
So you get it through the first time the FDA says, you finally get it through, and then you sell it.
A day later.
Why?
Because it was the entrepreneur's dream come true. Here, I'd gotten it across the finish line. Women had the option, and now I had a big company with the global infrastructure to not only have it approved in the US, but to march it across the world, and to put their deep resources to play so that women genuinely had access to it. We were a small company at the time we sold this. And so that opportunity was incredible. Plus, and very importantly, they were keeping me and my team. Unfortunately, none of that happened.
And like that's the part of the story I find so intriguing. One, so disheartening to you, right?
Oh, heartbreaking.
Because when you go find a buyer, I'm sure it's a lot like finding your child's like prom date.
Adoptive parents.
Okay, yeah, that.
Totally, it is. It is every sense your baby. It's part of your DNA by the time you get it to the point we had gotten to, and not just me, all of my team. And to sit on the sidelines and watch it just not receive the attention, for women to not be winning with an option despite the fight to ultimately break the store down, that was a hard few years. Nothing,
though, that you could have predicted, because Valiant went from like hell in a handbag. The CEO was ousted, and the shareholders actually sued, did they not?
We did.
Good for you.
So our Sprout shareholders. So we had written a contract in which there were really specific performance obligations. There was an educational commitment, the amount of people that would go out and educate the clinical community, and none of that was being met. And that really gave us the opportunity for a lawsuit, which ultimately opened a dialogue with their new leadership. Nobody was winning, and most importantly, women weren't winning because they didn't have access to the treatment, and that's why we ultimately got it back.
For kind of like nothing.
For nothing.
For nothing. Which is crazy.
So they win. Ultimately, they have a royalty on future sales. If we're successful, they will win. We wanted to move from lose-lose to win-win. And they, in exchange for it, we dropped the lawsuit as well. But if you, to your point, if you knew this and you were close to it, on the day in which we sold to Valiant, they were a darling. They were about $240 a share. they've traded down into the single digits in the subsequent couple years. Their organization has changed remarkably. There's new leadership, and women's health was not going to be an area of focus for them.
It's like that guy you date who you think is perfect, and then you find out he's like a murderer or something, right? It's like total disappointment.
Yeah,
all right, but let's talk about, okay, so you're back. Sprout,
yes.
We're calling it Sprout 2.
Yeah.
Sprout is back, but let's talk about the drug.
Yes.
And how it legitimately is in your brain.
Yes.
This is not, you had a really crappy bad day and you don't feel like having sex.
No, for sure. To understand what this condition is, you have to understand what it's not. It's not a relationship issue. It's not, I don't want to have sex because my partner never empties the dishwasher.
Right.
No drug is going to fix that.
Or I can't stand the hairy back.
And I should say, if you don't want to have sex and you don't care, also never take a drug.
Totally.
But for women who have this condition, and it's significant, millions of women have this condition. The prevalence of this is the same as erectile dysfunction is for men. Just think about that for a second. So women's most common dysfunction, men's most common dysfunction. For them, they had a desire they were once happy with. It's changed. That change has been persistent, and they care. It's actually causing profound distress, not only for them, but in their relationship. When I got started in this, I got started because of the brain scan studies. We knew in black and white and scientific evidence that for some women, the lack of interest in sex had a neural basis, and yet we weren't paying attention to it. And people would say, why are you such a crusader? Nobody's going to lose their life from this. What I would say to them is go talk to women who live with this, because they're losing their life as they know it.
I'm sure menopause had a lot, everyone would blame menopause on like that, lack of sex drive, things like that. So all the more it got pushed to the table, pushed on the side.
I'll tell you what, we have this idea. So what surprises people is this condition. It's called hypoactive sexual desire disorder. It's indiscriminate across the age bands. It affects young and old. Our indication is actually in premenopausal women. We've studied it in the postmenopausal population, but we don't have that indication yet. We'll continue to do work in that area. But what's funny is we think about, what I hear it most often as is, well, it's normal, right? It's normal. With time and with age, your sex drive changes. That may be true due to hormones, but if we thought of that around everything, we would similarly say, okay, well, over time your eyesight is probably going to deteriorate,
right.
But let's not give you contacts or glasses, right? Let's not address it. It's those things that actually change our lives, change how we show up in the world, how we live our lives. For me, we have studied this drug in 11,000 women and met our endpoints. And for some women, they're going to see a remarkable benefit, and yet people still have a deep passion as to whether or not they deserve to have it.
And yet, all day long, there's commercials about Viagra.
Of course.
Because that's okay. Take the little blue pill before we go to dinner.
And you can see that cultural mindset, even if you looked and understood the regulatory process. So I'll give you an example. When Viagra went forward for approval, there's a path you can take inside of the FDA in which you get fast track status. You meet such an important unmet medical need, they review you on a faster basis. Viagra had that. Do you think we did?
Of course not. How many men, though, were on the review panel?
There are men and women inside of the FDA, but I am often, my parents like to tease me, couldn't you have gone out and championed the next diabetes drug?
Right.
Because if I'm not diabetic, I probably have no point of view, but by God, if it is sex, we all have a point of view. We have a normal that we impose. And yet here's a condition, it was characterized in the medical literature in the 70s. We've known about it for all this time, but it took us till 2015 to break through.
Earlier, you said nothing was off the table, so I'm going to ask you,
please.
Was this an issue with you? Why did you become a crusader?
Because I had watched it from the male perspective. I was a CEO of a company there, and I saw it firsthand from women. I spoke to women.
So it wasn't a personal thing?
I spent a year. There's empathy as a woman. I have girlfriends who deal with this. I have a year of privilege of women who shared for me what happened in their life having dealt with this. And really, that's the secret ingredient.
Yeah, totally.
I just listened. And when I listened, I thought, by God, everyone should listen.
I actually think that's, well, first of all, listening is a dying art these days.
Sure.
More people need to do that. But that's the beauty of women, is that it doesn't have to physically affect me, because it emotionally affects me. And I need to get out there and fix it for the world.
No question. I find that in female founders. I invest as well. So I post to exit.
Right, which
I created the pink ceiling. I have a pink incubator of these portfolio companies. And what I find about female founders is that deep empathy that drives innovation, or drives the look at data through an empathetic lens. It informs decisions differently.
Before we move on to that, though, now, you're running Sprout privately.
Yes.
Are you going to go public again?
We were never public, so always private, and my intention is to keep it private for now. So we have a loan, thanks to Valiant when they gave it back, so we've got some run room to really get launched, not be distracted by fundraising, but I think, you know, that will come if we should need it.
And you lowered the price, like dramatically.
Half.
Yeah.
Unprecedented.
Yeah.
So if I look at a 20-year look back of drug companies, the only, not even to this extent, but the only scenarios in which drug companies typically lower price is in the face of competition or imminent generics. I put it exactly where I always had intended to. I had always intended to price the drug in line with where the ED drugs were. Here's why. For decades, 80% of men with insurance have had access to Viagra, Cialis covered by their insurance.
Of course.
If I parity price Addy, I will expect that 80% of women will also have access.
Good for you.
Valiant had doubled my price. That was a non-starter for me.
So it's back, and it is now $25. Is that accurate? If your insurance covers it?
$25 a month if your insurer covers it. If they don't yet cover it, I say yet.
Good for you.
Or if you're cash paying, it's no more than $99 a month.
Okay, so now we have to talk about the pink ceiling.
Can I say one more thing on that?
You say anything you want.
So I'll tell you what, one other piece of this in the consideration, you know, sitting back in heartbreak, you can either, you know, sit there or you can figure out the solution to it. So I've had some time to think about how to do this right. One was price, it's access, how do women get it?
Right.
And also it's the path to have the conversation. So unfortunately, I think in the absence of leadership, for all the enthusiasm that went through when we finally broke through with the first, it's been almost deafening silence in these last couple years, and I worry that women are even further shamed in having this conversation and raising their hand. So there is the opportunity to have this conversation through telemedicine. I'm really proud of that we have considered a way for women to have a meeting with a doctor from the privacy of their home.
What does that mean, like via Skype?
Telephone. So we went to, you know, there's well-established national networks who practice telemedicine. They're completely independent of us, but our ask to them is, if we could send women in your direction, will you make the commitment to be specially trained and REMS certified on the product? And they said yes.
That's super cool, but I find it also interesting that you're saying it's going backwards when 50 Shades of Grey was like the hottest thing going, right? And, you know, Salt and Pepper, I was just listening to that song, Let's Talk About Sex. By the way, that's old.
Don't. But
that's
we don't.
An old song.
We can say let's talk about it, but do we?
No, I mean,
do we really have this conversation?
I just spent the last 3 days watching Sex in the City, like from start to finish, and they certainly did a lot of talking about it. But I guess that's not the norm.
I think that it's, you know, very difficult to have that conversation. Do I hope that changes? Do I hope we do our part to really break the silence for women in terms of speaking up and feeling comfortable having this conversation? That's our commitment from an education perspective, but I don't think that's really what happens today.
No, I think you're right, sadly, unless you have too many cocktails and then you start talking. Okay, so the pink ceiling is amazing, and I love on your webpage it says self-made stiletto strapping, and that's so me actually. But why and when? How did you start this?
It was actually informed out of my heartbreak. Here I was, I'd sold the company, I'd had what felt like the entrepreneur's dream come true.
Because you made all this money.
Wasn't a billion-dollar happy ending, so you had to think about how it would be. And it was clear to me, having learned the lesson at the hands of some of the greats in women's health and women's rights, the best thing you can do is advocate for each other. And so I knew that my work would be reaching my hand back and pulling female founders there to outcomes like mine faster than I got there myself.
And you have 10 now.
10. Can you believe it? We've been busy. We like to keep busy.
But one of the things I think is cool, and one of the things we talk about here a lot, is getting more girls in particular in the STEM and STEAM fields.
No question.
And so now you're supporting females in these industries.
I am.
That's amazing.
In fact, you know, if it's the next fashion tech app, probably not right for the Pinkubator. I refer them out to other people who are similarly looking at female founders. But, you know, these great innovations, these breakthrough first in health tech, and often catalysts in social conversations, I love.
And you had said something that I totally believe, in that women see things a little differently, right? So we want to solve a problem or help. And so you were saying they look at research differently.
They do. Empathy. I think it's informed. If you look at some of the female founders in the Pinkubator, in the companies that we've invested in, I see them solving problems for their younger selves or for other women. That's what they care about. And I'll give an example. There's a woman who has a biometric sensor. You wear it on your ankle, it starts to watch how your movement changes, and it can alert you pre-injury for an athlete. Like, you start to favor things and you may injure.
That's really cool.
She grew up very poor, and an athletic scholarship made all the difference in her life. She got a full ride to college. She injured. She's now inventing for her younger self. I find that that is like the common pattern in DNA, if you will, of a female rule breaker is what I call them.
That's amazing.
And they break rules really to help each other.
So is that something that you're going to continue to expand and invest?
Sprout comes into the Pink Ceiling. You know, the Pink Ceiling was a follow-on of my work at Sprout. Sprout is now a company under our entire portfolio. It's mission aligned with everything else we do. How do you break through and how do you support those things that are female-led or focused?
I love that you're wearing pink and like everything's pink.
Everything. The Pinkubator should come to our office. It's all pink.
I had said we should do this in the Pinkubator.
Yeah,
sadly, it's very far away.
Love it, yeah.
How do you get people? I mean, is it weird to hire people to say, hi, this is what we do, this is what we sell? Do you find that that's difficult as being part of Addy?
I find that remarkable people are attracted to remarkable. And I think that I have the most incredible team. And a team who blood, sweat, and tears saw it across the finish line. And when I made the call and said, we're getting this back, they came back. And they had to face that heartbreak of the last couple years.
Sure.
And yet they dropped what they were doing and they came back to this. And that's their commitment to the cause.
So what's next? Like, take us out 5 years.
5 years. Okay, 5 years from now, we will have, I like to say, I got this drug for no money up front. I sold it for $1 billion. I've gotten it back for nothing. And my goal, ultimately, is to create $1 billion worth of wealth for women. That's what I hope I'll do. And that'll be because of our outcomes, because of reinvesting. And in that process, those things that we will have funded and made bets on will be things that will change conversations forever. In the conversation around female sexuality, I've always said my aspiration is today, if a woman goes to her doctor and asked about sex, she's asked 3 things. She's asked, are you sexually active? Do you want birth control, and do you want to be tested for STDs? But if we would add one question and say, and are you satisfied? We'd actually change the conversation about women and sex forever. We'd make good on the female sexual revolution.
Do you think women would answer honestly?
I do. I think if asked, they would answer. But nobody's asking. Nobody is addressing anything other than their reproduction, in essence. That's kind of the end of our conversation around sex. It's
interesting, isn't it, society? Like, we've come a long way in so many spaces, but not that. And I don't know why.
It's wired in. It's this idea of the psychology of everything for women. It's pervasive in healthcare. I mean, I can pull data that shows how long women wait in an ER presenting with the exact same symptoms because we've already decided, like, she's just freaking out. It is wired in, and I think that dismissiveness is changing. I think women are demanding that it change.
So before I let you go, if I am a startup health female-run company, how do I come to you and ask you to help me?
Find me at the Pink Ceiling. So there's a pitch process that we take you through. Follow me at Cindy Pink CEO. I'm always open for questions.
And actually, everyone should follow her. Your Twitter feed's amazing. It's really inspiring.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
You're awesome.